Hello, and welcome to NextUp, a career development panel for young professionals and students in agricultural and applied economics. My name is Gal Hochman. I'm the board chair of the Council on Food, Agricultural, and Research Economics, and I'm a faculty at Rutgers University. Right now, I'm going to pass this over to CFER's Communication Director, Bobby Patterson. Bobby?
Barbara Patterson is Director of Government Affairs for Michael Torrey Associates, a Washington-based food and agricultural lobbying firm. She advises clients on a wide range of legislative and regulatory issues impacting the sector. She held the same position with the National Farmers Union, where she advocated for family farmers, ranchers, and rural communities in the nation's capital. She focused on trade, livestock, competition, nutrition, and food safety. She holds a master's degree in agriculture and nutrition policy from the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy at Tufts University, and I've been waiting all week to say this, #Jumbo Pride, go Jumbo the circus elephant.
Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, and thanks to Bobby and Gal and CFAIR for hosting this event. A few years ago now, I was an intern and I went to all of the CFAIR intern events and went to many of their briefings on the Hill just to absorb as much knowledge as I could. So it's great to come back around and visit with folks, talking a little bit about how I've grown since then. As mentioned, my name is Barbara Patterson. I'm Government Affairs Director for Michael Torrey Associates, and Michael Torrey Associates, or MTA, is a food and ag lobbying and association management firm here in DC. And I'm happy to tell you a little bit more about my work at the firm in a few minutes. But first, I thought it might be helpful to share a bit more about how I got to be in this position and a little bit more about my professional history and my journey there. So I'm originally from Michigan, about an hour from Detroit. I did not grow up on a farm, and you'll come to learn I'm also not an economist. I was poised for a different career path altogether, but of course they say those things about best laid plans. I went to the University of Michigan. I studied history and Arabic, and in my final year of coursework, I still had a pesky science requirement to fulfill. So I thought about what might be, useful or applicable to my life, and I took a nutrition class. I obviously did not have a full appreciation for science at the time, much preferred reading my history books. I frankly didn't enjoy the class. I found it incredibly frustrating. Science and cycles, it was just very confusing. But it stuck with me, and I kept thinking about it. It kept nagging me in the back of my head. And over the course of the next couple of years, I really deepened my understanding of nutrition. I read a ton of books on food, nutrition, and then that kind of expanded to agriculture and the whole supply chain. And that's really been the theme of my work since then. I came to DC as soon as I could in the height of the Great Recession, and worked for a couple of different jobs while I saved up to go to grad school. And I kind of mapped out my game plan for that. And I had become aware of the Friedman School of Nutrition at Tufts, where, they looked at things in a very interdisciplinary way. And to me, that meant I didn't have to take a lot of science classes, although I still had to take some, which I appreciated. So I went to the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy after a few years of working in DC. And I went in very much on the nutrition side, looking at food policy. And in that program, you learn about economics, you learn about science, of course, and history. And one of the areas that I was exposed to through one of my classes was the agriculture program at the school. The director there is very passionate about agriculture and the historical context. And as a former history major, I really appreciated learning more about the roots of modern agriculture, and our system and how it intersects with policy and really the policy history over time. In this environment, I got to kind of explore the themes of how food and agriculture intersect. And like Philip, think this is the most important sector. It is the most important thing that we work on. We're all certainly biased in that regard, but it really impacts everyone in so many ways every day. And I think, like Philip said, we are so reminded of that during COVID and disruptions to supply chains, just how critical food and agriculture is to our existence and to what we're able to do as a society. So really appreciated that and loved getting to learn more about how agriculture looked throughout the Midwest. In Michigan, we have quite a different, we have a lot of crops, second or third most in the country. And so it's very rich in that way. And so learning more about how agriculture looked across the country was quite a privilege. Through connections that I interned in between years at grad school, came back to DC, and through connections there, I kept up relationships with, over time, I ended up working at the National Farmers Union after grad school. And I handled a number of portfolio items there. I worked on agriculture, of course, from a number of different perspectives. I worked on trade, competition issues, rural development, a really broad scope of issue areas, but I kept that tie to hunger and nutrition through partnerships and understanding the policy positions of the members of National Farmers Union. I ended up cutting my teeth on a lot of different ways to advocate for policies in a lot of different policy issue areas. The nature of the work was very broad and diverse. There was a lot of travel. I ended up managing a grant on food safety as well. So I learned a number of different things and ended up having to figure out that learning things quickly, understanding where to find the best resources, and really maintaining that interdisciplinary approach that I gained in grad school was critical to making successful arguments with policymakers, to building relationships, and to understanding how to move on your feet quickly when you're presented with a new challenge. Some of these issues were incredibly technical and took quite a bit of time to understand, and certainly the learning curve is steep if you don't grow up on a farm. But I really appreciated the background that Friedman gave me in sort of such a broad array of issues to be able to carry that forward in my work at National Farmers Union. When I was starting to look at making a career change, I knew that there were a couple of things that were important to me. I really appreciate varied work. I think COVID has been the longest that I've sat in a chair in my whole professional career. I'm normally traveling and meetings, going up on the Hill, having conference calls, going to different conferences. I normally have quite a bit of variety in my day-to-day, although that's changed a little bit with COVID. But I also get to work on one of the other pieces that was really critical for me was maintaining that connection to both food and agriculture, and being able to think about how those two things intersect, how the policy approaches and priorities can change based on where you sit in the supply chain. And really thinking through those challenges. I really like the bigness of those ideas and how they intersect. So I had a couple of job applications out, but I got a cold call from my current boss who I hadn't met, but he was intrigued by my academic background, which is good because it was a good investment. The role seemed like a really good fit, a diverse client base across the food chain. I could stay connected to farmers, which I'd really appreciated in my previous role. I spent a lot of time traveling with farmers, going out to farms, and I really appreciated that connection to that part of the supply chain. But I knew I wanted to my network in DC, get different points of view, and learn more about private sector advocacy. So now I've been at the firm for a little more than 2 years. I work with clients in both the food and agriculture sector. And again, every day looks a little bit different. We provide guidance, we help strategic plan for our clients on how they can best achieve their regulatory and legislative goals. And then we help execute those strategies on their behalf. So our client base is diverse, as I mentioned. It includes a land-grant university, several trade associations, food companies, farm organizations. And when you think about the challenges that the food supply chain has, you can imagine that it's not just nutrition or agriculture policy in a vacuum. Our clients face challenges in the transportation, trade, health arenas, So being able to do quick research, understanding those complex problems and being able to communicate them in a way that is palatable to the Hill or that makes sense, that can land, is really, really important. So I've carried forward this hunger for learning new things. It's so critical to growth and providing the best service for clients. We're always looking to see how we can expand our work with our clients, how to make them be more effective in DC. And part of that requires us being constantly looking for new opportunities and new areas for engagement for our clients. One of the big things that our firm does, and I think does well, is building relationships and coalitions. You know, it's very hard for one company or one organization to make change on their own in a vacuum. I mean, I think that's more the exception than it is the rule. So a critical way of being effective in DC is building out coalitions. And oftentimes we've seen coalitions, Cynthia mentioned the Farm Bill, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, but that's every 5 years. And so much work has to happen in between those to build strong coalitions, to maintain trust, and really present yourselves as the leader of those coalitions, that you can be sort of an effective sounding board. So we work a lot on coalition. We run a few coalitions. One is for crop insurance. And so we work a lot in between farm bills to make sure that those relationships are strong. We spend time engaging with each of those coalition partners to help share messaging. And we've been really successful in that regard. So that's one of the key areas of our work. And overall, I think, you know, the work for the private sector, especially in a multi-client firm like mine, is you get to have a very varied work scope, lots of different clients, lots of different policy issue areas, and an opportunity to kind of go as deep on those issues as you'd like. And sometimes you don't have the privilege of doing that because of time, but you do get to at least learn and get exposed to a wide array of policy issues and how those impact the food and agriculture sector. So I think I'll just leave it there. It's really great to be with you all and looking forward to questions you might have. And thanks again for the opportunity.